All right. Hi, everyone. So let's get started then. And we might still see a few more folks joining, but that is all right. So welcome to today's workshop, which will be on the topic of curating your online publication profile with Orcid. All right. Before we get started, I'm just going to turn it over to Molly, and she is going to give us a land acknowledgement.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. We acknowledge that Western University is located on the traditional lands of Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, Chenanton nations, on land connected with the London Township and Canberra Treaties of 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Coven Wampum. With this, we respect the long-standing relationships that the Indigenous nation have to this land, as they are the original caretakers. We acknowledge historical and ongoing injustice that Indigenous people endure in Canada, and we accept responsibility as a public institution to contribute toward revealing and correcting miseducation, as well as renewing respectful relationship with Indigenous communities through our teaching, research, and community services.
Thank you, Molly. So as we get started today, it makes sense to start with some introductions because I do have a number of colleagues joining me from the library today. So my name is Emily Carlisle Johnston. I'm a research and scholarly communications librarian at Western Libraries, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Noah, Kristen, Alana, Ariel, and Courtney, who are here to answer your questions and provide support as we talk about and maybe even get started with creating Orcid profiles today. We are all from the Research and Scholarly Communications team, and we are a team in Western Libraries that provides support to researchers with a number of different elements along the research lifecycle, which includes systematic and scoping reviews, publishing open access, and as we'll be discussing today, creating online publication profiles. Today, specifically, we're going to be talking about Orcid as an online publication profile. Just to clarify, by Orcid, we don't mean the flower, we do mean Orcid, the Open Researcher Contributor and ID, or Orcid ID for short. As we begin today's workshop, we are curious to know what your familiarity level with Orcid is coming into this workshop. And I do actually have a poll to gauge that. So I'm going to ask, as we get started here, how would you rate your familiarity with Orcid on a scale from it is brand new to me to I have a complete profile? There are only 4 options here, and you might be somewhere in between. So if you feel so inclined, if you have a different answer, please feel free to pop it in the chat. I'm seeing a comment in the chat. It's brand new to me. All right, it looks like everyone answered, and it looks like we have a wide variety of answers here, which is excellent. So some people saying it's brand new to me. Some people saying I've heard of it before, but don't know too much. Only one person saying they have a complete profile. So hopefully by the end of today, we have more people in the area of I have a profile, but it's incomplete, or maybe even in the option that is not on here, which is that you know how to start a profile and feel like you can. But thank you for answering that, and I'm glad to see the variety. I wasn't sure if I was sharing results, but if I wasn't, now you can see them. All right, so as we move through today's agenda and talk about Orcid and introduce you to it, we're going to first back up a little bit and talk more broadly about what an online publication profile is to start, and then how Orcid differs from other online publication profiles, some of which you might be familiar with. We're also going to talk about the benefits of Orcid and why you might want one, again, in comparison to other online publication profiles. And then I'll share with you the steps to set up your Orcid ID and add works to it. And then, of course, we'll conclude with a question and answer period. There are a couple things I want to share with you to keep in mind as we work through the session today. So the first is that once we get to the point of talking about how to set up your Orcid ID profile, I am going to be walking through steps that are outlined in a handout. Some of you might have a copy of this handout. If you don't, Kristen is going to share it with you in the chat. So feel free to download that and even pull it up with you as a guide during this workshop, or to use it as a reference after today, once you set aside some time to build your Orcid profile. The second thing I wanted to share, because there's so many of us here from the library today, is that we're going to leave the question and answer period a bit openly structured. So we'll run it like a normal question and answer period, and you can ask your questions and we'll answer to the group. But if you feel like you might benefit from some more one-on-one support or communication, or sorry, one-on-one support or conversation to answer your questions, we can set up a breakout room for you to go, and one of my colleagues will meet you there, and you can share your screen or talk through some questions you might have about Orcid if you feel like getting a little bit more hands-on with it. I'll remind you of that at the end, but just keep in mind that if you are wanting that, it is an option. The last thing I'll say before we jump into the content is that we've left ample time for questions, so feel free to save them for the question period. But if you do have questions throughout and you don't want to forget, feel free to pop them in the chat, and one of us will get to answering it either in the chat or we'll raise it during the Q&A period. All right, so without further ado, let's get into the content then, starting with what is an online publication profile? In short, an online publication profile is a way to curate a record of research, or it's a collation of your research and scholarly outputs and achievements. So basically, it's an online profile with a compilation of your research and other scholarship that tells others who you are and what you do as a scholar. And those others might be potential collaborators, potential employers, potential funding agencies, what have you. Now, some online publication profiles also include a persistent digital identifier that distinguishes you from other researchers, and so can be used to disambiguate names. We know that there's very few unique names in the world, so a digital identifier would distinguish one Emily Carlisle from me, Emily Carlisle, the librarian and librarian researcher. Now, some of you who are less familiar with Orcid might be familiar with some other online publication profiles already, like Google Scholar, Scopus Author ID, and Web of Science's Researcher ID. So how does Orcid differ? Well, with Scopus Author ID and Web of Science's Researcher ID, these are two IDs that are automatically assigned to you if you have a publication indexed in Scopus or the Web of Science databases. So you'll only have one if you've published in a journal or some other venue that's included in either database. You also can't attach publications from other sources to your Scopus Author ID or Researcher ID, so both are really just a record of your work in Scopus or Web of Science, not a complete profile of everything you may have published or achieved. A Google Scholar profile, on the other hand, is a profile that pulls things from journals and other outlets that are indexed in Google, which does tend to be more comprehensive than just journals indexed in Scopus or Web of Science, for example. And it can also be added to manually. But what people tend to use Google Scholars profiles for is often the robust tracking of citations that they do. So you can see citations to your works. You can also see exactly which papers or chapters have cited your work, provided that those papers or chapters are also indexed in Google. So how does Orcid differ, which is the question in a session about Orcid? What sets it apart is a couple things. First, it can give you a comprehensive record of research activity that goes beyond your papers and presentations to include things like grants and awards and maybe other kinds of works like magazine articles and data sets. It's something that you intentionally create, so it's not automatically generated for you. And if there's one thing we want you to take away from today, it's that it integrates with other systems so that information can get automatically pushed from systems into your ORCID profile, making less work and less maintenance. I'm now going to play a video that goes into much more detail to give you a full view of what ORCID is. And I realized I made the mistake of not sharing my sound when I shared my screen. So I'm going to pull that up now with sound so that you can see, but also hear the video.
Meet Sofia Maria Hernandez Garcia. She is an active and accomplished scholar in her field.
Emily,
She
we're
does
on the wrong
research,
screen.
writes and publishes, teaches, speaks at
You cannot
conferences,
have the
the
video.
things that most research.
Whoops. What did I have up? Hopefully nothing that
It was a Word document on your
Oh,
desktop.
you were seeing my notes.
Yeah.
All right, sorry about that, folks. Let me get started again.
Meet Sofia Maria Hernandez Garcia. She is an active and accomplished scholar in her field. She does research, writes and publishes, teaches, speaks at conferences, the things that most researchers and scholars do throughout their career. She has done her work at several different organizations and has been fortunate to receive grants to support her research. Sofia wants to concentrate her time and energy on her scholarship, though sometimes things get in the way. Funding organizations want to review her past work before making an award. Her institution needs her to provide a complete list of her works for her promotion review. Potential collaborators are trying to figure out if she is the Sofia Garcia they're looking for. The internet, repositories, and other resources can help answer some of these questions, but they all have the same core challenge. They attempt to link research activities and researchers based on the spelling of a person's name. As individual as we each are, our names are actually not that unique. Even in the same field or institution, there can be others with similar or even the exact same name. And it can get even worse if you consider all of the potential variations of a name. Names can change over time, are sometimes expressed in different ways in different situations or languages. So when someone searches for Sofia, they may or may not find all, and only the things that can be attributed to her work. Today, many institutions and agencies solve this problem with paperwork. They ask Sofia to fill in forms, to list her works and include her affiliations and funding history. Some may even ask her to list her collaborators along with their past work, affiliations, and funding. What is related to Sofia's work and what is not? There has to be a better way. ORCID IDs are unique and persistent identifiers specifically for researchers, analysts, and scholars. With an ORCID ID, Sofia can clarify what activities are hers, regardless of how her name is expressed. Sofia registered for a free ID at the orcid.org website. ORCID is a nonprofit organization that allows our users to control what data are linked to their identifier and how those data are made public, shared with a limited group, or made private. The community may access data made public by our users for no fee, and also attach it to her organization and any new public research activities she engages in, such as publishing a paper, releasing a data set, or applying for a grant. With the ID attached to her activities, it makes it easier for people, institutions, and systems to figure out which activities are Sofia's, even if her name doesn't always appear in the same way, distinguishing her from others with the same or similar name. ORCID IDs are collected and used internationally by many institutions, including publishers, repositories, professional associations, universities, funders, and research organizations. In addition to attaching her ID to new activities, Sofia can allow these organizations to read her ORCID record to get her already curated list of past activities. Best of all, if Sophia leaves her current institution, the ID travels with her, along with the list of all of her past activities. She can continue to use the same ID throughout her career, even if she changes employers, moves to another country, or starts to do work in another field. By linking the Orcid ID to her work when submitting a manuscript, applying for a grant, or registering for a meeting, Sophia ensures that the organization she works with can get the information they need with less paperwork for her. It means people will find all and only her work when they search the internet. Sophia can spend her time concentrating on what matters most, and that makes her very happy. Get your Orcid ID today. It only takes 30 seconds to register for one and is completely free. Orcid, connecting research and researchers.
All right, so in summary then, an Orcid ID is a unique and persistent identifier that distinguishes you from other researchers, including those with the same name. And our main takeaway from today's session is that many organizations, including publishers, funding agencies like SSHRC, and universities, use Orcid IDs. So if you share your ID with them, they can see the complete profile of your work, but at the same time, they can also add works to your profile, perhaps as you publish them. So one example is I published a paper a couple months ago, and when I signed up with the journal, I gave that journal my Orcid ID. I actually found out that my work was published when I saw the notification from Orcid that said that the paper got added to my profile, before the editors had even told me. So you can see that it syncs well with other systems. What you're seeing on the right-hand side of this screen too is that some journals and publishers and organizations are so seamlessly integrated with Orcid that you can log into their systems using your Orcid ID, or on the flip side, log into Orcid using maybe your institutional credentials, which is what you're seeing on the slide here. So before we get into talking about how to actually populate an Orcid profile, I wanted to pause here and see if you have any questions about what it is in general, or what the benefits are of having one. Feel free to pop your questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand and then share it over the mic. Last call for questions here, and then I'll move on to the next slide. All right, seeing that there are no questions, I'm going to move on. But if you do come up with questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. So now that you know what an Orcid ID is, the next step then would be to create your profile. I'm going to remind you here about the handout, which maps everything that I'm about to share in detail, and which you can either follow along with as I speak or consult after today's session. The first thing you should know is that creating an account takes all of 30 seconds. To do so, go to the link on this slide, so orcid.org, click on sign in/register, and then click register now and use your UWO email as your primary email. If you follow those steps, you will have an Orcid account. And if you'd like to do so while you're in this workshop and listening to me, then please consider this your invitation to do so. And Kristen just shared the link in the chat to make it even easier for you to create an account. Once you've got an account, the next step you're going to want to do is to start populating it with your information, starting with basic biographical information. We suggest that as you're adding this biographical information, you don't spend any more than 2 minutes on this part, and I'll provide you with a couple of other tips here. The first thing is that you definitely want to add other names, especially if you've published with them or published with name variations, like sometimes including your middle initial, sometimes not. because this will help later with importing your work into Orcid. You can add your country here, so set it to Canada if that's where you reside. And then you can add any websites that you might maintain. So a personal website or professional website that you want to share with others. We do recommend adding other email addresses because that is especially helpful if you forget your password. You can log in with the other email address. And then one last tip here is that with every piece of information you add to your Orcid profile, you can also choose the visibility settings that you want. So you have the option to share with everyone that comes across your Orcid profile. You can set it to trusted parties only, and I'll speak more to trusted parties later on. Or you can set it to only me so that only you can see that information. It depends on how you're wanting to use your profile, right? If there are some pieces that you want for your own record keeping, that might be where you set it to only me. But if you want to share everything with others, then you would change the settings to everyone. With basic biographical information added, you'll then start building out your scholarly record. So most of these pieces that you see on the slide here, you're going to enter manually, which can get tedious. It's like putting stuff into your CCV, but it does help and it is important. So the things that you can and might consider adding here include your current and past employment, your education, any invited positions and distinctions that you've held or received, membership and service positions you hold or have held, and past funding you've received. A couple of tips on this slide then. For employment, keeping your employment public does make it easier for others to find you in the name search in the Orcid registry if they're looking. And for funding, you can use the search and link feature, which connects to the Dimensions Wizard. And the Dimensions Wizard is a portal that includes dozens of Canadian funding agencies, including SHARC. It includes many funding agencies from other countries, and it also includes many cancer and health-related funding agencies, which I say because you may find that this portal isn't so relevant to you because it is taking off in some of these other areas like cancer and health, but it is worth checking. And then if there are cases where the search and link doesn't return everything for you, you can enter the funding that you've received manually. Again, this does take some time, but it's worth setting it aside to do so up front so that you don't have to do it and maintain it as much later. So that is some of the other information that you can add, but really the last thing and the main thing that you'll use your Orcid for is to showcase your works. So your publications, your presentations, but maybe other things that you've worked on too, like encyclopedia entries, data sets, reports, white papers, and more. Really whatever it is that encompasses your scholarly work and profile. Oh, I'm seeing a question in the chat, so I can answer that before I give a demonstration of how to, or if one of my colleagues wants to answer that, before we jump into how to actually add works to your profile. And the question is, where do I enter different versions of my name? And I'm just pulling it up my profile again because it logged me out, which I'm happy to pull up my screen, or if somebody just wants to jump in now, they can. Sorry. Did you want me to share my screen to demonstrate that? Would that be helpful? Yeah, there's a name section at the top, and it actually says there's a section where it says also known as, and so you can enter your published name or other names that you might be known by in that section right at the top of your profile.
Great, thank you. I see it. Thanks.
Perfect. All right, so to adding works to your profile, for those of you that are just starting out with creating your profile that do have a number of published works, this is what's going to take the most time. It is time consuming, but you do only have to do it once. And then once you've added your works to date, going forward, most of your works will be automatically populated, and you'll only have to think about adding the few works that may not get auto-populated. As you create your ORCID profile, this is also where you are most likely to run into questions. So that is, so if you're working on it today, that is what we can be here to help you with. But also we're happy to follow up as if you work on it later on via email. So the easiest way to add publications is to use the wizards that are found under Add Works, Search and Link. This will help you to automatically populate the publications that you find through each wizard. And I'm going to play a video showcasing this search and link feature with the Crossref metadata search wizard to give you a sense of what that tends to entail. Sorry, folks, it was playing 30 minutes before this workshop. There we go.
Connect your ID to your existing works using search and link wizards. Linking your works to your ORCID identifier is a great idea. It ensures that your research contributions are correctly connected with you in many search databases used by scholars. It can also help automate the updating of your various research profile pages. In collaboration with the community, we provide search and link wizards that help you find your already published works and easily connect them to your ORCID ID. Start by logging into your ORCID account. Then, scroll down to the Works section and select Add Works, Search and Link. Several databases are available for your search. Here we show how this works using the Crossref database. Just click the Authorize button to allow them to read your ORCID record and add works. Crossref now uses the information on your ORCID record to identify works in its database that you may have authored. You can improve the search by adding your name variations to your ORCID account. Once you authorize the search, you select which works listed in the results are yours and click the Add to ORCID button and confirm by clicking the Yes button. And presto, your ORCID ID is stored with your works in the Crossref database and your works information is connected to your ORCID record. Depending on the default privacy setting you've chosen for your ORCID account, your works information will be visible publicly to your trusted third parties or just to you. You can change the privacy settings for each work manually if you want, simply by clicking on the relevant icon. Congratulations, your work is now more discoverable. Remember to keep using your ORCID ID as you publish to make these connections for all of your new contributions.
Okay, so as we saw in that video, the search and link wizards can be a handy way to find and add published works to your profile pretty seamlessly and automatically. That video showed us how to do so with the Crossref metadata search, which is one of the tools that we do recommend. You would have also seen in that video where in the video, it spoke to the value of adding name variations. So just another plug for recommending that you add name variations if you've published under different names or with a variation of initials and full name being added, because it does make using these search and link wizards easier to find your papers. So in the search and links wizard, we suggest searching in the following order. First, using Scopus because it's the easiest to use and it has good metadata, so it'll give a more fulsome and it'll result in a more fulsome and complete profile. Then we recommend the lens, and I'm going to demonstrate this one in just a few moments because there are a few steps involved to doing so, including creating an account with the lens. But it is pretty comprehensive and does find more in the social sciences and humanities than Scopus, so we do recommend it. And then using the Crossref metadata search, which we just saw in that video. Anything with a DOI should be there. Now, if you don't find everything in those three tools, then we also suggest searching with BibText. There are more steps to follow to get your publication information into BibText format, but those are outlined in the handout. So if you do get to that point, the instructions there are pretty clear. And then you have the option to add manually as a last resort if there's something that you've published or shared publicly that you're not finding and do want added to your profile. So again, the steps for using these three wizards are laid out in the handout, but I'm going to give a bit of a demonstration of the lens now, just to show you, again, another example of a tool that you can use. All right, are you seeing my Orcid profile? Perfect. All right, so if you have yours filled out, this is what it'll look like. But as you can see, my name's at the top. I've got some current and past employment information, my education and qualifications. I haven't filled out these areas, but that might be something I do in the future. And then down here, I've got some works added. So I already have some works that are added, but I've checked on the lens and there is one there that I haven't added. So I'm going to show you how I would go about doing that. So here we go to the add button and then the search and link. Now we're seeing the search and link wizards that are available. So here's the cross-ref metadata one that we just saw a demonstration of. Scopus here, which we said we recommend, and then the lens is at the bottom here. And as I said, it is going to prompt you to create an account or to sign in. So that's what we're going to see as we log in here. So looking for your lens profile, register or sign in. So you could register for a free account if you wanted to. And then I'm actually just going to sign in with Orcid now because I do have it set up that way. So I'm going to proceed. Now I am signed in. So I could start my search this way, but what I'm actually going to do is go to my profile. That is going to show me which things are already in here that are in my Orcid account. So we can see there are quite a few, well, not quite a few, but it's a pretty comprehensive list of things that I've published. If I wanted to see more of my works, then this is where I can do a search for my name. I'm actually going to try it just with another name variation because I have a feeling that that might turn up more. And now we'll see if it pulls anything else that's not recorded here yet and as part of my profile. So it pulled a couple variations of my name, quickly checking, none of these are me, but this one is probably me. And now it's giving me a list of things that it thinks might be associated with me. So here it pulled something from Emily Carlisle, but this is not something I've worked on, so I'm going to uncheck it. This one is me, but I already have it on my profile. Same with this one. This one is also me, but I'm just going to choose not to add it to my profile. This one is not me, and this one is, but it's already on my profile again. This one is me, which I forgot about because it's from undergrad, but it's not on my profile and I want to add it. So I've checked it off. I'm going to go to the top and I'm going to record authorship. It's going to ask me to confirm that I am the author, and now I'm going to record it. So now it should be added to my profile. And if I open up my Orcid account, let's see if it got recorded. Sorry to scroll quickly. It did, it got added just like that. So those are the steps that you might go through in the lens to add works to your profile. Bit of a step at the beginning with creating and actually creating an account and signing in. But then from your profile, you should be able to search and find things that are associated with you and add them to your Orcid account. Are there any questions about the lens or from my colleagues on the line, any other steps that would be worth demonstrating while I've got it open? Nope, and it looks like the question in the chat has also been answered. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to, oh, does somebody have a question?
I have a question. So I'm at the lens. Do I have to create a new account then? A register free account. So I have to register, and then in order to search my own publication from undergrad and grad.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes, you do have to create an account.
Okay.
Let us know in the chat if you run into any further hiccups, and that's something we can help with during the Q&A period, but if it all works seamlessly, then that's perfect. Okay, so those are really the main steps to adding works to your profile. I'm going to share just a couple more tips and nuggets of information, and then I'll open the floor for Q&A. So one thing that we haven't talked about, but I did allude to earlier, is that you can add trusted individuals to your account. Trusted individuals are other Orcid ID holders to whom you have granted permissions to edit your Orcid record. So these could be, for example, research assistants who work with you, maybe do similar work with other profiles. Now, to add them, you go into account settings and trusted individuals, and you search for their name. So if you want to be added as a trusted individual for someone else, they will have to add you in this way. If you want someone to help you and be able to see and add things to your profile, you have to add them in this way under account settings. Don't share login details, do it this way. It'll make them a verified trusted individual for your account. And then the last thing I'll say here is that it may take some time to add works to your profile, especially if you've published under several names or name variations, and we've seen some examples of that. If your publications aren't indexed in Scopus or easily findable in the lens, and you have to try some of the other tools. If your publications don't have DOIs, and I think there was a question about that in the chat, and if you publish mostly not in journal articles or in other languages. But for works that you've published to date, you do only have to do this once to get your profile up to date, and then you don't have to really think about it again. Because, as we've said throughout, Orcid is integrated with other systems, so it makes things easy going forward and can really automatically populate it in a lot of situations. And of course, these are things that we can help with. So if you have questions after the workshop, you can always email us. But if you have questions now is the time where we can take them. And I think we're going to stop the recording here so that this is really